Production of Real Ag is made possible in part by an underwriting grant from
Kansas Farmers Union, working to protect and enhance the economic interests and quality of life for family farmers, ranchers, and our rural communities. Learn more about our mission of education, cooperation, and legislative advocacy at kansasfarmersunion.org.
Since the beef checkoff program was started, we have lost 500,000 cattle producers in the United States. And they have paid in over $1 billion in checkoff funds, only to see themselves go broke. But if you talk to the checkoff program, the National Cattlemen Beef Association, or your own KLA in Kansas, or you talk to the National Beef Board, they're going to tell you, oh, we got $11 and some odd cents return on investments. Well, tell that to the last guy that had the bank foreclosed on their feedlot.
You are what you eat. It's a tired old saying. We probably heard one of our grandparents say it. But it's true. Our entire body is made out of the things we consume. So, what are we eating? And beyond that, where is it coming from? What's the history? What are the consequences of what we consume? Not just for our bodies, but for our minds. And beyond that, the planet. Because what we often forget is what we eat impacts the world around us. Our air, our water, our soil, our society. Every choice on our plates impacts the world around us in more ways than we often think. Agriculture is not just about growing crops and raising animals. It's about the environment we live in, the economy we rely on, and the future we create. So, let's dive a little deeper, shall we? This is Real Ag. What is the checkoff program?
It's a program that people use whenever they have a to-do list, and they put this thing, it's called a check mark.
The checkoff program sounds like a Russian subdivision.
I asked a lot of people. I asked a lot.
Honestly, I have no idea.
No, I've never heard of this. What is this?
In fact, of the 47 people I talked to, not one of them knew what this was. In fact, the general consensus seemed to be that this was some type of Russian thing, but this is check off OFF, not OV. Now, this is far from any type of scientific study, but 0 out of 47 is a pretty stark percentage, and it really highlights the public awareness of this program, which at first glance seems to be non-existent. Or is it? That's right, the Got Milk ads, a result of the Dairy Checkoff program. The Beef It's What's for Dinner ads, a result of the Beef Checkoff program. And if you were around in the 90s like me, you might even remember these egg advertisements.
I love eggs, the incredible edible egg. I love eggs.
A result of the American Egg Board, also a checkoff program. Now, in the huge scope of American agriculture, certain stories have a tendency to remain in the shadows. Things can get overlooked and under-discussed. The checkoff program is one of these things. This once uncontested system designed to support and promote American agricultural goods has become the subject of intense scrutiny as stakeholders, consumers, and policymakers raise important questions about its efficiency, transparency, and overall impact on American farmers. So, join me in learning just what the heck this is. Let's get started. What is the checkoff program?
The checkoff program generically is across 22 various commodities that farmers and ranchers raise and then sell. The checkoff is kind of a misnomer. There's really no checkoff at all. The fact is that the government mandates that a farmer or rancher will pay a certain amount on every unit of sales. So for corn, it would be per bushel, or soybeans per bushel. On cattle, it's per head. So farmers sell their commodity, and then the government extracts some of that money back in what's called checkoff programs for commodity promotion and research.
This is Joe Maxwell. He's the co-founder of Farm Action.
Farm Action is a think tank and a watchdog, government watchdog, that spends time doing deep research and then developing policy recommendations for issues that we believe need to be addressed as it relates to agriculture and food.
Since Joe isn't going to say it, I will. Joe is an absolute expert about the current state of agriculture in the U.S. He holds degrees in ag economics and law from the University of Missouri. He's a family farmer. His work's been profiled in some of the country's top publications. He's the former lieutenant governor of Missouri. And honestly, I was a little intimidated to talk to him until I saw that he also had long hair.
Yeah, I just kind of let it grow, and then I'll cut it all off and let it grow another 3 years. So
I do the same thing, but just on the sides. So
yeah. Yep. Don't ever worry about long or short hair with me.
So getting back to the checkoff, we know what it is now. So how did this all get started?
The original intent of checkoffs was genuine and was something that most farmers thought, yeah, this is something we should do. We should pool our money in an effort to market our goods. I, as an individual farmer, sell the same thing as Jack down the road and Sally on the other direction. So why don't we pool some of our money together and sell more beef, or sell more pork, or sell more soybeans or sorghum? And so the beginning thought was that would be a promotional program. Also, we ought to have some research, both public research on how to better sell our commodities, but also research on how to better raise our soybeans, or better grow our cattle, or raise our cattle. So the programs were designed to allow farmers to pool their money and to help promote those particular products, as well as provide good applied research, and so that we'd have better understanding of how to raise the livestock or the crops.
This all sounds pretty good. Farmers who are making the same product pooling some of their money together for better marketing and research. So what's the problem?
The problem is, Max, is that they've gone off the track. No longer do these programs focus on what the individual farmer needs, or how to promote the growth and the economic viability of the farmer or rancher who's paying into these programs. Rather, they focus on how to better the industry. Well, that may sound great. Well, the industry made $11 on every dollar invested in checkoff programs, return on investment of $11. But the farmer didn't get any more money. They didn't get any growth in their profit. Maybe JBS did, the largest meat packer in the world, or maybe Cargill did, one of the largest grain traders in the world, on selling soybeans. But the industry did well while the farmer is going bankrupt.
So what is the industry, and how is it different from the farmer? We'll get there. But in the meantime, ready for a crazy statistic?
Since the beef checkoff program was started, we have lost 500,000 cattle producers in the United States. And they have paid in over $1 billion in checkoff funds, only to see themselves go broke. But if you talk to the checkoff program, the National Cattlemen Beef Association, or your own KLA in Kansas, or you talk to the National Beef Board, they're going to tell you, oh, we got $11 and some odd cents return on investments. Well, tell that to the last guy that had the bank foreclose on their feedlot.
Now, the beef checkoff program has been a huge component in the checkoff controversies. It was originally established in 1985 as part of the Beef Promotion and Research Act, which was a part of the 1985 Farm Bill. This act authorized the collection of a $1 per head fee on the sale of cattle. So, if you're a farmer with 1,000 cattle, that's $1,000. 10,000 cattle, $10,000. You can do the math. Now, in the 90s and 2000s, the beef checkoff funded several high-profile marketing campaigns, the most famous being the Beef It's What's for Dinner ads, which are still widely recognized today.
You can have a great beef dinner in no time at all. Well, almost no time at all. Beef, it's what's for dinner.
However, in the 2000s, the beef checkoff faced legal challenges due to its mandatory fees. Some producers and groups claimed that it violated their First Amendment rights. And in 2005, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of the program in the Johans versus Livestock Marketing Association case. That's right, this went all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, my original hope for this episode was to be able to talk about all of the checkoff programs. There's an egg checkoff and a mushroom checkoff. There's a Christmas tree checkoff. I was hoping to be able to do an entire segment on how strange the old milk ads were.
What girl's gonna go for me with a body like this?
Hang in there, Tom. I'm you 2 years from now, because you're drinking milk and working out.
Well, I'm not changing so far.
But milk's at work inside you.
Oh, yeah?
And tomorrow the difference can show. All that protein for muscle and calcium for bones.
But I'm still a skinny bench warmer.
Hey, if the sight of yourself at 18 doesn't convince you, Tom, listen to your senior year girlfriend.
Hi, Tom. I'm waiting.
Milk.
I mean, do you think that'd be allowed these days? And that's not even the weirdest one, believe it or not.
I'd like to meet you, but I'll bet you're hoping for a hunk. And all I've got to offer is sensitivity, intelligence, and charm.
I'm drinking milk, though, and for the next couple seasons, I'll be working out.
Milk's about the best thing I can drink right now to help me build strong arms,
powerful legs, and a broad chest. And when all my work is done, will you love me just for my body?
I can live with that.
Milk.
I mean, where do you even start? But as interesting and funny as all that is, what's gone on with the beef checkoff goes a lot deeper than a few goofy advertisements.
Well, one of the areas that we focus on is the beef checkoff. The National Cattlemen's Beef Association has a long history of abusing the funds that they are entrusted with. The National Cattle Beef Association is a trade and lobbying organization. It claims to be the voice of the cattle producers of America, when in fact it only represents about 4% of all the cattle producers in the United States. 70% of its budget, though, is from checkoff funds. It is the largest contractor. It's the group that gets the most beef checkoff funds, is the lobbying and trade organization called National Cattlemen's Beef Association.
Now, the NCBA, or the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, is kind of like a student council for the beef industry. Just as the student council should represent the interests of all the students in a school, the NCBA is there to represent the interests of the people who raise cattle and sell beef in the US. But recently, an issue has come up.
National Cattlemen's Beef Association opposes mandatory country of origin labeling. Currently, you can know where chicken comes from. You can know where your dog treats come from. You know where your clothes, look at your tag in your clothes. You know where everything comes from, where the country of origin is, except for beef and pork. We have been trying to push to get the country of origin, mandatory country of origin labeling for both beef and pork, and the National Cattlemen's Beef Association opposes that provision. Why? Because we've got to remember, they represent the industry. They are a trade and lobbying organization that is proud of the return on investment that the checkoff funds are getting for the industry.
See, I told you we'd get back here. What is the industry?
The industry is usually the processor or the distributors. It's not the farmer or rancher. JBS's interest is not in paying the farmer more for their product. It is for selling more beef in the United States. Smithfield, largest pork company owned by China. 25% of all the pork chops in your grocery store are owned by Smithfield, which is now owned by China. Their interest is selling more pork. Last time I checked, I raise pigs. I don't raise beef, I raise cattle. So the whole narrative, the whole framing of this system is focused on the industry and what they sell, and not on what the farmer sells, and putting more money, investment money, back into the pockets of the farmer and the rancher, who are the ones paying in the checkoff. You know, if these folks want to benefit the industry, then go tax the industry. Let them pool their money. But don't take the farmers and ranchers' money, pool it in the name of government, and then benefit everybody but the one person paying into the funds.
This has been at the heart of the controversy surrounding the beef checkoff. If the people getting the checkoff funds aren't using those funds in the name of the farmers, it doesn't really matter if demand is increasing, because the farmer isn't seeing more money from the checkoff. The industry is.
JBS, Marfrig, both Brazilian, love to bring beef in from some foreign country, drop it into the United States, and sell it to you as product of the USA. You as a consumer, anyone listening today as a consumer, should have a right to know where their food comes from. You're going to put it in your body, something that basic. I can tell you where my socks were made. I can't tell you where my steak came from. And NCBA lobbies against that. They should not be a recipient of the cattle producers' checkoff money. The domestic production should be able to say, look, we don't want a lobbyist who lobbies against our interest to get any of our checkoff funds. So we're advocating that if you lobby, you should not get any of the checkoff funds. This is not complicated. They ought to be a compliance audit. There ought to be a performance audit once every 5 years. Those audits ought to be released to the public, not only to the farmers and ranchers that pay into the funds, but to the general public. We have a right to know where our government money goes. And if you're lobbying against the farmer's interest, you should not receive any of these dollars.
So let's jump back to that student council analogy. Remember those school fundraisers where money was collected for different activities and clubs? That's kind of like the beef checkoff program. Farmers pay a fee, and that money gets used to promote beef. However, like Joe just said, the NCBA has a lot of power in the beef industry, and they don't always represent the interests of smaller farmers. It's similar to how some students might feel if the student council only represented the popular kids and not everyone's interests. This is similar to how the NCBA has been viewed as protecting the industry and not the farmers who are raising the animals.
I'm Bill Bullard, and I represent RCAF USA, which stands for the Ranchers Cattlemen Action Legal Fund, United Stock Growers of America. We're the largest trade association representing the producers of cattle. So we exclusively represent farmers and ranchers that raise and sell live cattle and then market them downstream into the manufacturing sector. So we're unique in that we only represent the producers. We do not represent the meat packers and distributors and the retailers.
Meet Bill Bullard. He's been a significant figure in the agricultural sector for years now. Advocating for policies and initiatives that support ranchers and farmers, he has years of experience and a deep understanding of the challenges faced by those who raise live cattle. He's also a goldmine of information about the beef checkoff program.
Some of the early work of the checkoff, the beef what's for dinner slogan, for example, many people have heard that, but that's been a long time ago and there hasn't been any comparable programs or efforts underway to increase beef demand and to increase beef consumption amongst consumers.
But what's interesting is even if the demand is high, the farmers don't necessarily see it in their pockets.
Even if they are successful in increasing beef demand, and we've had very strong beef demand up until this drought, and we had severely depressed prices. In other words, the strong demand did not equate to prosperity for independent cattle producers. They were losing money at the time that consumers were paying exceptionally high prices for beef. And so the system is fundamentally broke. And the checkoff program has contributed to it. It's contributed to it again by funding those corporate entities and the ideal that what we want is a vertically integrated system that looks a lot like the hog and poultry industry, where you have very few participants You have large corporate entities in control from birth to plate. And in the poultry industry, of course, it's from egg to plate. And that's the direction this industry is going under the current operation of the beef checkoff program. And that's what needs to be changed.
I'm sure you're hyper aware of this, but the Labeling Act going on right now.
And we strongly support it's a mandatory country of origin labeling for beef. We believe consumers deserve to know where their beef comes from, and the meat packers and the recipients of the checkoff dollars today are fighting vehemently to oppose the enactment of mandatory country of origin labeling for beef.
So why? Why on earth would they do that?
Well, it's extremely profitable when the meat packer has unilateral authority to decide from what country to source the beef to satisfy a generic demand for beef at the grocery store, because consumers don't know where the beef came from. So when consumers purchase beef products, the meat packer decides where to source it, and they can source it from 20 different countries, from Uruguay, Brazil, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, Mexico, Canada. They can source it from these countries at a price far below what the United States cattle producer can produce beef. So the meat packers profit greatly because consumers think they're buying domestic product produced under US production standards, when in fact, much of that beef, approximately 20% of the beef available in the United States, is from 20 different countries, not the United States of America. But importantly, all beef bears the US inspection sticker. So when a person purchases a beef product that has a USDA inspection sticker, they would naturally assume this must be a domestic product. And that's not the case at all.
Now, this is something not known by a lot of consumers. In the US, beef can be labeled product of the USA even if the cow was raised and slaughtered in another country, like Brazil. Why is this? Well, as long as the meat is processed or packaged in the US, it gets that sticker. As more people become aware of this practice, it's been controversial, as it misleads consumers who are interested in buying products that are exclusively raised, slaughtered, and processed in the US. Now, why does this matter? Well, a couple of reasons. Different countries have different regulations and practices for things like animal welfare, environmental standards, and perhaps most importantly, food safety. In fact, just a few years ago, Brazil found itself in the middle of a very interesting story. In 2017, Brazilian Federal Police, which is kind of the equivalent of our FBI, initiated Operation Carne Fraca, which translates to Operation Weak Flesh. The investigation revealed that some of the largest meatpacking companies in Brazil were involved in a scheme in which they were bribing government officials and food safety inspectors to overlook unsanitary practices and allow the sale of tainted beef. Some of this beef had gone so bad they were using chemical products to mask the smell of it. 3 months and a few haircuts later for both of us, I caught up with Joe and talked his ear off about this.
Millions and millions of pounds of beef gets tainted. They spray it down, bribe the inspectors to let that meat out of Brazil. Immediately, China, there were like 3 countries that immediately shut their borders to Brazilian beef. It took the United States 90 days to shut down the borders to Brazilian beef.
Now, compared to other countries, it does seem the US took a pretty considerable amount of time to stop beef imports from Brazil. This could be for a few reasons. The first being the US authorities might have wanted to conduct their own investigation to verify the claims. There's also diplomatic considerations, regulatory processes, as well as the economic impact. An abrupt halt of beef could affect the supply chain, prices, and availability of beef in the US market. However, it's important to remember that the US eventually did stop all imports of beef from Brazil. And this ban lasted all the way from June 2017 to February of 2020. This is why supporters of Cool have said it's so important. It helps to ensure that imported products comply with the same standards and regulations as domestically produced products. It also ensures that imported products are properly labeled, helping to promote a fair competition between domestic and imported products.
We have given to the multinational meat packers the leverage they need in order to substitute cheaper foreign imports for domestic product, which drives the demand for the domestic product down and which causes independent cattle farmers and ranchers to exit the industry.
In conclusion, the complex relationship between the beef checkoff, the reliance on foreign beef, and the absence of country of origin labeling raises a lot of questions about industry reform. Without clear labels, consumers may unknowingly support larger meatpacking companies, allowing them to become more dominant. This concentration poses risks as it can lead to reduced competition, higher prices, and less diversity in the meatpacking industry.
Cattle producers are being forced to help to increase the profitability of the nation's highly concentrated meat packers, where we have 4 meat packers controlling 85% of the fed cattle market. 2 of those 4 meat packers are Brazilian owned. They're not even a domestic organization or domestic corporation.
Go through those numbers again. Did I hear you right?
Yes, we have 4 of the largest meat packers in the United States control 85% of the fed cattle market. And 2 of those 4 largest of beef packers are Brazilian owned. One of them is JBS, the other one is Marfrig. This is simply a fairness issue. Why are the independent family farmers and ranchers having to fund a program that benefits the multinational corporations? So there's a lot of reasons for consumers to get involved. Chief among those, of course, is food security. Their food security needs are best met with a system like we had 10 years ago, not with a system that we will have 5 years from today.
Production of Real Ag is made possible in part by an underwriting grant from
Kansas Farmers Union, working to protect and enhance the economic interests and quality of life for family farmers, ranchers, and our rural communities. Learn more about our mission of education, cooperation, and legislative advocacy at kansasfarmersunion.org.